Hello, Canada viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. I am here with co-host Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV for episode 25 of Canada and Palestine, The War on Zionism. Thanks for being here, Laith.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Aidan.
All right, Laith, we have, as always, have so much to talk about. First of all, let's talk about the wave of three Israeli attacks on Beirut less than 24 hours, the third on Zukat al-Blat, which killed the neighborhood's mayor. What is the current situation in Beirut with the Zionist monsters raining down hellfire?
Yes, so those three attacks that you refer to were the first inside Beirut and since the beginning of this war, and they were all timed 24 hours before the arrival of Hochstein, the American negotiator, that former Israeli officer. So it was kind of like a blackmail against the Lebanese government. Hochstein was coming with conditions for a ceasefire that include the right of Israel to invade Lebanon anytime it wishes and to bombard Lebanon anytime it wishes. Basically, was conditions for surrender. And the attacks, those three attacks, included an attack on the headquarters of the Ba'ath Party, the Lebanese branch of the Ba'ath Party, where the media relations director of Hezbollah, Haj Muhammad Afif, was and got assassinated. And then the one that you mentioned in Zuqaq al-Balat, which is the attack was on the home and office of the mayor of the neighborhood, which is 500 meters away from the Lebanese parliament. So clearly, this was blackmail and death threats to the Lebanese government and their officials. And in response, Hezbollah last night hit the middle of center of Tel Aviv, but they hit a building that is used by the Mossad. When Hochstein arrived in Beirut today, he practically got the middle finger by the prime minister and the speaker of the house, and they refused any conditions other than the full implementation of 1701. And therefore, he's now on the way back to the Zionist colony. And the Zionists are now threatening to attack Iraq. So you see, the threat of a full-out regional war is being used by the Zionists to force the political actors in the region to bow down to them, which is not going to happen.
Right. So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the Resolution 1701. What is your read on this? If this gets fully implemented, is this a good thing for the resistance? Because I've seen some talk of the Lebanese political actors and other actors more in the mainstream, right? Talking about this as a potential good thing. So I think an audience could use a sense. Is this actually a helpful thing? Is this quiet subversion? What is the deal here?
So 1701 was written up by the United States and Israel at the end of the 2006 war, when the Israelis were being defeated, basically. And the local collaborators that were in control of the government of Lebanon at the time, the prime minister of Lebanon, rushed to sign 1701, without the support of Hezbollah or the resistance. And in 1701 stipulates that there's a UN observer troops that will work to make sure that Hezbollah is not south of the Litani River, but at the same time to stop the Israelis from invading Lebanese territory. So since 2006, 1701 did not stop the Israelis from attacking Lebanese territory from the air, from the sea, from the ground, something like 30,000 violations of Lebanese airspace and territorial waters since 2006. So, but even with that, Hezbollah still was operating in South Lebanon because Hezbollah is the people in South Lebanon. And there was no way that the UNIFIL could confront or have a war with Hezbollah. They would have been defeated too. But lately, the UNIFIL has been acting directly as an occupying force. Specifically, the German naval force has been firing at Hezbollah's drones that are going to the Zionist colony, but not firing at the Israeli jets. And also, a week and a half ago, there was the kidnapping of a Lebanese sea captain from the Batroun region in the north of Lebanon on the coast by Israeli special forces. And those Israeli special forces came on a dinghy. So clearly they didn't go all the way back to Palestine on a dinghy. They probably got onto the German destroyer that was parked across from Batroun. So the UNIFIL is now acting as part of an occupying force of Lebanon. But going back to the regular situation before the beginning of this war will, make UNIFIL irrelevant anyways. So yeah, going back to 1701 is fine because the UNIFIL was never able to neither protect Lebanon nor stop the resistance from protecting Lebanon before this war started.
All right, like now one thing I think should be mentioned is, of course, in your interview for Free Palestine TV recently, there was talk about the German government facilitating mercenaries for the Zionist entity. Now, they were specifically targeting refugees, correct?
Oh, yes. Refugees from North Africa and Western Asia, from Afghanistan all the way to the Sahel. They were trying to give anybody there that's illegal refugees. But mainly, they're talking about really Al Qaeda and ISIS remnants that they absorbed after the defeat of ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria.
All right, so let's talk about. I saw this in Electronic Intifada, and there's this talk about Mossad interference in the ICC prosecution around Netanyahu that's supposed to happen, but it's just that's imploding and it's imploding the institution as well. So, what's your sense of the events there?
Yes, so clearly all these attacks right now on the prosecutor Khan, claiming that there's sexual, misbehavior on his side that the ICC is investigating. I mean, his face looks like a person that goes to the Epstein Island. So I don't doubt that Khan has some sexual perversion. Uh, but at the same time, the only reason these accusations of sexual perversion come out to somebody that has been a loyal servant of imperialism for so long is because he swayed away a little bit off the track and was trying to, put arrest warrants on Israeli government officials that are accused of war crimes or crimes against humanity and genocide. This is another example of the UN institutions and the whole international law system that came into effect after World War II. This is another symptom of the total collapse of those mechanisms and laws. And, the only path forward once the collapse of the international relations regime starts is to quickly find a replacement to them or to go to a full world war. And this is where the dangerous moment that we're in. So these things at the ICC mirror what is happening on the front lines in the West Asia and the Ukraine border lands. This is now being mirrored at the collapse of the institutions and laws globally.
All right, Liz. So now we're looking to talk about an issue I think is going to slip off people's mind right now. Of course, with the horrors going on Gaza, West Bank, and well, in the region, thanks to Israel. How are the fanatical settlers trying to take advantage of Israel's campaigns?
Well, they are definitely going wild in the West Bank. It's the wild, wild West Bank right now. Daily, there's attacks on villages that are far away from the central cities in the provinces in the West Bank. And you can see some of those videos on our website, on our social media. Although YouTube banned us, and but then, luckily under pressure, have gave us back our channel. We can talk about that more if you want to. But what I'm trying to say is that because there's so much attention on Gaza and the front lines here in Lebanon, the stories of what's happening in the West Bank and the Naqab, also the desert area, the Israelis demolished a whole village just yesterday in the Naqab. The ethnic cleansing campaigns outside Gaza are slipping off the headlines. And Free Palestine TV is doing our best to cover those stories, to fill the gap. Please support us, basically, and watch the content on our social media accounts.
So let's talk about this situation that occurred with the YouTube channel of Free Palestine TV. Now, my understanding is after this dust cleared a little bit, that they were targeting specifically around an interview with Khaled Barakat. And also we're seeing the JDL fascist thug, Mayor Weinstein, trying to claim credit. So let's talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, within 24 hours, our TikTok account was deleted, no excuses given, no reasoning. And then our YouTube page, and again, with no reason given or any content pointed out. And so we made a public call about it, put it on our Twitter, asking people for help and inform them of what happened. And that's when Mayor Weinstein and the JDL took credit for it, although I don't really think this is true. But clearly, because of those two pages being attacked in a span of 24 hours and deplatformed on them, there was some organized something. And in my mind, this is most probably that somebody visited or called the executives in those on YouTube and TikTok and ask them to take this action directly. So I don't think it's the Mir Weinstein has a phone direct, but somebody like in the Canadian government or the Israeli government who hate me and hate FPTV, they would do that. And the social media outlets are submissive to the Zionist and the Western governments. But after hundreds of thousands of people shared our appeal on Twitter about this ban, including huge accounts like Jackson Hinkle, uh, suddenly our channel was allowed back on. Our appeal was accepted, and then half an hour later, after our channel was back on, we got a strike for the first time. This is the first strike ever we get for an episode on Wartime Cafe with Khaled Barakat. And the excuse was that this supports terrorism. Of course, Khaled Barakat, that episode was recorded before any listing of his name and that of Samidoun on the terrorist list of the US and Canada, which is now being fought in court. It's not a given thing. And clearly, Khalid Barakat and Samidoun are not terrorists. They are, working for the rights of Palestinian prisoners, campaigning across the world on that. And they've been successful. And this is why they have been targeted. I think it's really ridiculous of YouTube to do this, but at least we're back on. But everybody should know that we are demonetized on all platforms. We survive only direct donations from our viewers, and we are in need right now of 100 monthly subscribers at $100 in order to balance our books and or 1,000 new subscribers at a $10 a month. But we are urgently in need of this to stabilize our costs, especially that We've been shadow banned for a while on Twitter since the election night. We suddenly stopped receiving extra followers. We were up to 1,200. And then by, yesterday, we realized that we have actually gained 2,000 new followers in November, but lost 2,000. So Twitter was trying to keep us by force at the 10.2 thousand followers for the whole month of November. And because of the flood of support that we got since yesterday, that throttling was breached. That shadow ban was breached, and we've gained 1,000 followers since the morning, finally, on Twitter. So you see how severe the control was on our pages across all platforms that the Zionists have influence in. And that shows you how angry they are at the effectiveness of our content and how unique it is, and how actually the content that we're producing is something that is crucially needed in the struggle for the liberation of Palestine, for everybody to understand what's happening in the areas that the mainstream media is not covering, even social media activists are not covering.
Well, like certainly, I would second your call. I think the capitalists can sympathize with financial challenges. So definitely, audience members, if you have the wherewithal, please do go ahead and support FP TV in any way you can. Now let's shift to the Canadian scene, and we have a rather interesting and disgusting, frankly, story. This raid on Charlotte Kate's residence. Now, I can't say this is exactly shocking because there was the farcical terrorist designation put on Samidoun, but certainly this is a step in the enforcement. And really, I think at least you couldn't really have a better placed person to answer this question. Where does the Canadian movement for Palestine go from here? We've seen an escalation in terms of the targeting of factories, but we're seeing a very open scene where no dissent is allowed and any pretension of liberal democracy is dead. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's now getting to the revolutionary grounds, okay? Especially as we see ourselves, steamrolling into a world war that could lead us to a nuclear holocaust. There is, this attack on Charlotte Kates and Samidoun is the beginning, of internment camps for Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, and anyone who supports the Palestinian liberation or stands up against Zionism in Canada. These are the beginnings of that. We're seeing similar things happen in the UK, in France. In France, they jailed a French nurse that went to Gaza and gave testimony in front of the EU about the massacres she saw. She's now jailed, I think, 15 years for supporting terrorism by just going and aiding people. And when Trump comes into power, he promised to, enact 1780 something, whatever act that allows him to arrest, intern, and deport anyone without trial, including American citizens. And while he, although promised to use this to deport 20 million quote unquote illegal immigrants in the United States, I believe he will be targeting primarily the Palestinian Arab Muslim communities, anyone that supports them. Do you think the capitalist fascists want to find themselves without cheap Mexican labor? No, they want those, indentured workers in the fields of the United States. What they want to get rid of is anyone who criticizes the Zionist colony or American imperialism, and that's going to happen. So our viewers in Canada need to get serious about preparing themselves for the wars and start taking action that preempts the descent to fascism and internment camps that is on the horizon.
All right, Leith. Well, something that again emphasizes the outright degeneracy of the Canadian state is the fact that 10,000 Israelis have been granted Canadian citizenship, I believe since October 7th, the Al-Aqsa flood operation. Zero Palestinians. Again, this state, colonial to its core, and absolutely shameless.
Yes, yes. And Canada, if Canada took 10,000 Zionist colonists that are not dual citizens, probably, there's another 50, 60, maybe 100,000 dual citizens that came back to Canada that have abandoned. So think about how many did the US give citizenship? How many did the UK, France, Germany? Okay. So if we just, you know, look at Canada being, what, 10% of the Western population, then you can probably count hundreds of thousands that have been absorbed. Look, the Zionist colony has lost at least 2 million of its citizens. They admit around 750,000 that already left. But I think it's more closer to 2 million. There's out of the 7 million Zionist colonists, there's only 5 million left on the ground. And if many of those, if they can find a way out, they'll find a way out. I feel bad for the Canadian population because this means we will start seeing more of what we saw in the streets of Amsterdam because these Zionists are used to having the right to lynch people in the street. They're used to having the right of shooting Palestinian children and nobody, making them pay for it. When they're going to be in the streets of Canada and they see an uppity Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, or Canadian citizen, they will be itching to shoot them also. And so we will see these hooligan situations increase in the streets of the West as these fascists start filling the streets. And finally, I would say from this pulpit, the West, we can offer as Palestinians, the West, to take that we will take all the Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims in Canada, in Europe, in the US, all absorbs them as citizens of Palestine. If you take your garbage European colonists off our land, you don't take only 10,000 Canada, take as many you can and give us anybody you don't want. We're willing to take the brilliant Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim immigrants that are doing all the medical care and engineering and even other menial jobs that Canadians don't want to do. We are ready to absorb all of those undesired in the West into Palestine if you take these garbage that colonialists in our land.
Now let's talk about the the situation, which I think very much links into what you said previously. Mayor Weinstein, the Zionist fascist, is outright pushing to reconstitute the Jewish Defense League chapter in Canada. Again, this is a very serious threat towards Palestine organizing. Now, I should add a clarifier, which is looking back at it, it's never really clear how exactly far, say, the JDL chapter in Canada really got, because it kind of strikes me as something that really was a creature of Ontario. Laith, you would know a lot more about this history, so let's talk about this revelations of this move, and also how much of a boogeyman was JDL Canada in reality?
Look, the founder of the GDL proper, um, Irv Rubin, was from Montreal. And he moved to New York and founded the JDL in the United States. This is we're talking about, late 70s, early 80s. So there is a big connection between the Canadian Zionist movement and the JDL, even though the JDL/Canada may have looked like it's small and weak, but it has that pedigree of being the founder of the JDL being a Montrealer Uh, and during the time that I was in the student union at Concordia University, after September 11, 2001, the JDL founder, Irv Rubin, came to Montreal, was recruiting there, and did a lot of death threats and bomb threats at Concordia University, at least three different bomb threats. And luckily, no bomb was really placed. And a few months after that, he was arrested in the United States for planning to bomb the biggest mosque in San Francisco, biggest mosque in the U.S. And luckily, our Nation of Islam brothers and sisters in the jail threw him out of the window of a second floor, and ended his career right there. So I wouldn't say that the JDL is not much of a threat in Canada. You know, all you need is one crazy person to do something. They're all crazies. Of course, Weinstein there is a wimp, and he's scared to do anything. Like all Zionists, Zionists are all wimps. They cannot fight on an equal stage. So they wouldn't fight me in the street, let's say, hand to hand. They wouldn't fight a Hamas fighter or a Hezbollah fighter with guns face to face. They will need a whole fleet of aircraft carriers to bombard, and kill children. That's what they're good for. So this actually tells you that the most likely thing that the JDL will do is not have a rampage in the streets where Palestinian Arab and Muslims could beat them up like happened in Amsterdam once they do some crazy actions. What's most likely and is that these wimps at the JDL would do some treacherous below the belt attack like they did before in the United States when they bombed the offices of late Professor Edward Said, and also when they bombed the offices of Arab American congressman from California and killed him, okay, in the 1980s. So what people should be worried about with the GDL is these terrorist actions that are the hallmark of cowardice of the Zionists.
So to put it in simple terms, the JDL as an organization itself, in terms of membership, mass reach, doesn't offer a threat in that sense, but what it does offer a threat in historically is more lone individual or small group events, attacks, etc. Would that be fair to say?
Exactly, you're right there.
All right, so let's talk about another farce. This fake murder plot. So you had this RCMP notice to Irwin Cotler on October 26th, according to the Globe and Mail. They told Cotler Iran was going to attempt to assassinate him in the next 48 hours. Then, our useless Canadian MPs uncritically repeated this narrative of a planned assassination of Cotler, putting a motion which unanimously passed to condemn this fake plot. Well, Laith, who is the most crucial person in Canada? Like, why in the world do they think we're gonna fall for this?
I mean, because the Canadian MPs are dumb overall, and Pavlovian in their responses to any cue words by the Zionists. We saw that unanimous motion passing in the Canadian Parliament that includes all the fake controlled opposition of the NDP that all condemned the supposed Iranian plot to take out Irwin Cotler. I have tried over the last decade to educate people around the world about the treacherous Irwin Cotler and how important he is within the Zionist global control of narrative and efforts to ban criticism of Israel and so on, the IHRA, how crucial he was to make it. But every time I brought it up to people in the UK, in the US, even here in the region that know all the major names that are involved and so forth, nobody knew him. It took a lot of work for me to even educate on his treachery. And so the Iranian government doesn't even know who the hell this guy is. He is at his deathbed. He looks like he's ready to crock out. So he's probably not happy that nobody gives a damn about him in the axis of resistance, and he wants to enlarge his head. And let me just add this another level to this. Nobody in the world gives a damn about Canada. Let me tell you. You try to bring the story of Canada or the struggles that are happening in Canada to anyone on this planet. Everybody's like, what? Canada? Who? What?
Wait,
Nobody
wait,
cares.
you're also speaking to someone who knows that very well because it's a heck of a challenge to get many people to actually pay attention to the Canadian stories. That's why the Canfiles is specializing more and more because simply put, it is hard to justify to the average person in somewhere else other than Canada that these are stories that are big and so forth. They're big to Canadians, but we aren't important in the grand scheme of the world. And that's kind of something Canadians are going to need to start dealing with in a concrete way because I think there's some sort of mentality, right, where other people are going to jump in to deal with Canadian affairs, et cetera, right? Foreign interference paranoia, a question of media support, et cetera. Nobody's going to do something about Canada other than Canadians. It really is the case. Why would anybody even bother? It's a very, very tough thing. Now, other people might sometimes, but Canada just isn't as important as, frankly, left, right, center thinks they are,
Oh
really.
yes. Oh yes. And actually, the most of the world thinks of Canada as just the outhouse for the US, where the US goes out to the woods and takes a dump. That's literally what it is. For the rest of the world, that's how they see Canada.
Oh, well, I can't exactly put up a spirited defense in opposition to that. So, all right. But Laith, I want to thank you, as always, for co-hosting the latest episode of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. And I do want to remind people, of course, that with Lath's financial appeal, please do go ahead and give some support to Free Palestine TV. If you've got anything left after that, please do throw a little bit the CAFL's way. We are having our own financial challenges, but we're both, as you know, Lath, fighting through this no matter what. And the final thanks goes to the audience. Thanks as always for making it all the way through this episode. Spread the work of Free Palestine TV, spread the work of the Canada Files, and have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.